Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. We're going to get started in just a minute or so. We'll allow our guests to arrive into the Zoom room. So we'll give them time to do that. It looks like they are, you all are beginning to shuffle in. We'll give it just a minute or so before we get started. Thanks for joining us tonight. Welcome again. For those of you that are just now joining us, we're allowing a little time for our guests to arrive into the Zoom session. We'll get started officially in just another 30 seconds or so. It's great to have you all here. Still seem to be coming in, so we'll wait just another little bit to get started. All right, I think we are right where we need to be attendance-wise, so we'll go ahead and begin. I just wanted to say good evening or afternoon or maybe even morning, depending on where you are joining us from today. In fact, our registration list included folks from 20 different states and 5 different countries. We want to officially welcome you to Ohio Wesleyan's Bishop Plus Virtual Information Session Series. My name is Lori Patton. I'm the Director of Admission here at Ohio Wesleyan. I'm also a graduate, class of 1995. I've been working here at OWU in the admission office for the last 23 years, and I'm the proud parent of 2 battling bishops. My daughter is a junior this year, and my son is a first-year student. And I will be moderating tonight's session called Rock Solid Advice, featuring current student parents. As you may already know, this is a Zoom webinar, which means that we are not able to see our audience members nor hear you. In fact, you'll be on mute the whole time, but you will be able to see and hear us when we're talking. So whoever is speaking on the panel will appear on the screen. You are able to ask questions at any point in time throughout this webinar via the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we hope that you'll take advantage of that. Joining me tonight are our president, Dr. Rock Jones, and 4 sets of parents of current OWU students. You'll see the names and the connections of those parents on the slide that's up, and I'll be inviting them to introduce themselves to you in just a few minutes. But first, I'd like to invite Dr. Rock Jones, again, our president, to offer a welcome and spend a little bit of time with you, giving you some updates and some insights on OWU. Rock?
Thank you, Laurie, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are joining us from. We're thrilled to be able to have the time together this evening and to visit about Ohio Wesleyan. Let me begin as we gather for a session with parents this evening by noting that I, like Lori, in addition to working at Ohio Wesleyan, am an OWU parent. Our youngest daughter, Anna, graduated 6 years ago. And I have to say that while I had been at Ohio Wesleyan for 3 years before she enrolled as a first-year student, I quickly found that as much as I had come to appreciate Ohio Wesleyan through my work, I came to appreciate it even more through the role of a parent and seeing the impact that the institution had on my daughter, the experiences that she had in the classroom, in activities beyond the classroom. She had the opportunity to travel outside of the United States 3 different times, including 2 travel learning courses and a semester abroad in India. She had a tremendous experience, and so I have a sense of the things that you as parents may be thinking about this evening, and I'm thrilled to welcome you for this conversation. I was in a session earlier today with a group of college presidents hosted by the Council of Independent Colleges. This is an event that was to have happened on our campus 1 year ago this week. And we had at the last minute, as was the case with so much of our society a year ago, to face the realization we would not be able to bring people to campus. And so we postponed the event for a year. And I was reflecting as I welcomed the people to the virtual event this morning that when we made the decision a year ago to postpone, we naively did not imagine that a year later we would still be, and to some extent, in the midst of the pandemic. Though it's different now as the vaccines are beginning to roll out, and perhaps we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. It's been an extraordinary year, a year unlike anything any of us has ever experienced. I know that's true for you and for your families. To go through the senior year in high school in the midst of a pandemic means that your sons and daughters have missed some of the fundamental experiences that normally would accompany the senior year in high school. And yet we're grateful to know that you're continuing with the college selection process and that you're with us this evening to learn more about Ohio Wesleyan. We made the decision last summer that we were going to do everything we could to give students the most normal experience possible. And so we brought students back to campus for the fall semester. We gave them the opportunity to be remote if they chose. 85% of our students chose to be on campus, largely in a combination of hybrid learning, both in person and remote learning. And again, this semester, 86% of our students are studying on campus. Our faculty have been tremendous at ensuring that students had the opportunity to continue to benefit from the robust liberal arts education that characterizes Ohio Wesleyan, and that in that experience, they would continue to benefit from small classes with close personal interaction with their professors, even if their professor happened to be remote at a particular time or even for the entire course. We've been fortunate to keep the campus safe and healthy. We've conducted now close to 3,000 tests for the coronavirus this semester since students began returning in mid-January, and to date we have had only 14 positive test results out of nearly 3,000 for this semester. I'm really proud of our students for all that they have done to ensure that they're following the protocols and that they're ensuring that we remain safe and healthy. And we're now in the process of planning for a fall semester when we hope to have everyone back on campus and to be returning to life more like life before the pandemic. I'm thrilled to welcome you this evening. One of the things I always say to parents when they're on campus during the recruitment process, and typically Melissa and I would be hosting you in our home as a part of the experience of visiting the campus. One of the things I always want to say to parents is that when we recruit students to Ohio Wesleyan, we're not just recruiting students to the student body, we're recruiting families to the Ohio Wesleyan family. And if your son or daughter chooses to enroll at Ohio Wesleyan, you'll become a part of that family. And this evening, you'll meet some other parents who are a part of that family, and you'll be able to hear from them about the perspectives they have as parents of students who are currently at Ohio Wesleyan. So welcome. I'm thrilled to have this time with you this evening, and I look forward to your questions. Lori?
Great, thanks, Rock. So at this point, I'd like to introduce you to our current student parents. I'm going to invite each of them to tell you who they are and a little bit about how their child or their children in some cases chose OWU, and share a little bit about how the OWU experience has been for their child or children. Once each of them has had a chance to share, again, we'll work through a series of questions, some of which you all submitted ahead of time, some which I hope you'll submit again through the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen throughout the panel, and we'll work through those together. So to help you put faces to names, we're going to go in order of the names that you see on the slide. So we'll start with Jennifer Bruni. Jennifer?
Hi, everybody. You guys hear me okay? Okay, so it's great to be here with you. It looks like I have one of the younger students. My son, Sandro, is a first-year student at OWU, and we are probably in the same shoes as a lot of prospective parents right now, in the sense that Sandro never visited OWU. He just showed up there sight unseen on move-in day. So that's kind of crazy, things that wouldn't happen ordinarily when it wasn't a pandemic, right? But he had visited a few other colleges before, so he had a sense of what he was looking for in terms of colleges and where he wanted to go. He's a wrestler, so he was pretty heavily recruited by Coach Reed. And there was another student who is now a sophomore at OWU who went to high school with Sandro and was very much involved in getting Sandro to go to OWU. But I spent many, many hours looking for the right school for Sandro. And it was really important for us, for him to go to a small school, a small liberal arts college. And I think that OWU has done a tremendous job keeping the kids safe. I do want to say that. Shout out to Rock and all the gang at OWU. I think you have a 0 COVID rate right now on campus. So they have done a fantastic job. I cannot sing the praises of OWU strongly enough, because I think there's so many good things about OWU that make it a terrific place for your student to go, mainly because there's nowhere to hide at OWU, right? It's a small school. We live in the Boston area, and I remember telling Sandro, a lot of kids apply to UMass, Boston University. And I'm like, if you go to these larger schools, you're going to be in a class with literally 700 other kids. And he was like, what? So at OWU, that is just not ever going to happen in a million years. And so you really get that attention from the professors, but you also get a huge variety, because it is a liberal arts college, of classes, and you can really spend time exploring and figuring out, maybe you don't really know what you want to major in, and that's okay at OWU. You have time to explore and figure that out. And I really encouraged him to, take a creative writing class. He's definitely like, I'm a writer. So unlike me, I think most kids do the opposite of what their parents do, right? So he's really into STEM and sciences. But I wanted him to, take a theater class, take a writing class, take an art history class, which he's doing this semester, be well-rounded. And I think that a lot of people, they don't get liberal arts. And liberal arts to me is about thinking critically and looking at the world in a different way, and knowing what questions to ask, and sort of, looking at the world through that prism of curiosity. And I don't even know if I'm making sense right now. Am I making sense? Like, it's time to explore and take the time to figure out what you want to do. And I think that that's harder to do at a larger school.
Great.
So anyway, that's basically all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Jennifer. Debbie and John?
Hi, this is Debbie and John Falco. We're from Brecksville, Ohio, which is just south of Cleveland. You can see that we have 3 children, and all 3 have either have graduated or graduating or a freshman. Our daughter Ellen, who graduated in 2018. Our daughter Kate, who is a senior and graduating this May, and then our son Jack, who's a freshman, and Jack is actually the 6th Falco to attend Ohio Wesleyan. So I'm not going to say that my kids didn't have a choice not to attend Ohio Wesleyan, but I think they saw the red and black and decided to attend. Even though we encourage them to look at other schools, but they found that Ohio Wesleyan suited them. All 3 of our children are very different. Have very different interests. Our daughter Ellen played 4 years of women's lacrosse at Ohio Wesleyan. Our daughter Kate is a STEM zoology major, and our son Jack has music interests as well as accounting. And the thing with Ohio Wesleyan is that we wouldn't have found at a larger school is Jack wanted to continue his music. He loves music. He's a trumpet player, loves jazz, and a smaller school gave him the opportunity to major in both music and accounting at the same time versus larger schools, which really want you to focus on either music or another discipline. So, we find that a big benefit of a small school. And as Jennifer mentioned, it's the access to faculty, access to professors. I would say not only the faculty, it's the administration. I know Rock Jones is a fixture throughout the university. There won't be a day that our students don't see him. Sometimes they shy away because they always see him and they don't want to talk to the president of the university at 8 o'clock in the morning, but
he's there.
He's there. He's a fixture. He's there to welcome the students every day. So that is, I think, the biggest benefit that we've seen from Ohio Wesleyan is it's small. It's liberal arts. It gives our kids a very well-rounded education, not just one discipline, but because it is a liberal arts education, it gives them opportunities to see and thrive in different areas. Anything you want to add, Debbie?
It's our middle daughter is graduating this year, and one of the things that Ohio Wesleyan has just started, that she's in the first group that they've done this, they actually paired her up with a mentor. Our daughter went to Costa Rica to study bats. This is the zoology major, and they actually hooked her up with a mentor who is also an Ohio Wesleyan graduate, who has a PhD and works with bats in Colorado. And so she's kind of guiding Kate. They have calls every week on how to apply for jobs. They've actually had classes on how to plan your finances. It's basically, we jokingly refer to it as Adulting 101. And it's been fantastic. So not only is she getting the background in science, they're also helping guide her with an adult who has the same interests on how to take her education and apply it to the real world. So our daughter who's graduating already has a giant job lined up. Our daughter who graduated in 18 was an accountant. Upon graduation, she had a job lined up. So it's not just the education, they get jobs. And ultimately, that is our goal. We want them to fly the nest, and ours are flying. So it's been great.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Debbie and John. Raquel?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Amadeus had to be on a plane, so he's not able to join us, but I'm Raquel Mason, proud mom of Haley Mason, who's currently a sophomore at Ohio Wesleyan. And it's great to see the folks on the call. I haven't gotten to meet Jennifer yet, but I feel like Lou and Cindy and Debbie and John, we've seen each other quite a bit. So I think what Rock said about joining the Ohio Wesleyan family is really magical. Haley is our second child, so we've been through the college route before. So I think we can compare and contrast without naming names. But the four main reasons we chose Ohio Wesleyan are very similar to what have been mentioned by previous parents. First, a quality liberal arts education, but I think delivered with distinction because of the close relationships the students have with the faculty. So I think it's not just, everyone can say liberal arts education, but how Ohio Wesleyan delivers it, I think is very unique. I think the rich out of class experience is super wonderful, not just encouraging your kids to do different kinds of classes, but I think Haley did everything from some crazy indoor Frisbee league to intramural soccer, like all these fun, interesting things for them to do outside of the classroom that help them build multiple relationships. I've really been impressed by the fact that she doesn't just have one group of friends. She has these friends and these friends and these friends. And I think it comes from all of those wonderful ways to get engaged outside of the classroom. I think the culture is something you can feel on this call. It is a warm family. And to me, when COVID happened last year, it really was brought to life. You know, the kids had to come home very abruptly, like every other college kid in the world. And within 2 weeks of being home, I noticed Haley just talking to somebody. I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, we have a professor that does check-in calls with us every week just to see how we're feeling. And I was like, what? I have nieces and nephews all over the country. And I'm like, nobody has check-in calls and literally touches to make sure, not that you're academically okay, but in the middle of a global pandemic, how are you feeling? And that just made me say, okay, worth every dime. And the last piece, I think, is something Debbie mentioned. I'm a business executive and all of the warm fuzzy stuff is fine, but I'm really interested in outcomes. And I think when we were making our decision, what solidified it for us is when I asked the head of the department that Haley would be studying in, I said, I want to know what happens to these kids after graduation. And, most people give you a generic answer. He produces a spreadsheet for me with the last 5 years of kids who graduated from the department, what they're doing. And I was like, okay. It was absolutely impressive information, whether it was graduate school, studying in the field of their choice, or working in the field of their choice, or some other thing. I mean, and what I loved about it was he knew the answer. It wasn't like he had to go say, well, I don't know, let me go to, he's like, well, let me go to my spreadsheet, print. And I was like, okay. So I have been really impressed with those things, the liberal arts education, the out of class experience, the culture, and the outcomes, because at the end of the day, as Debbie said, we want these kids to build great lives for themselves. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Raquel. And last but certainly not least, Lou and Cindy.
Hello to everyone.
Hello.
We have two of our children. One of our daughter went to OWU and graduated in 2019. Our son began at OWU the following semester, that fall. And they came to Ohio Wesleyan from two different points. Our daughter applied to large state universities and smaller liberal arts colleges. Cindy and I, of course, preferred not only the smaller liberal arts colleges, but also OWU in particular. But our daughter took her time in comparing them, and finally came to the decision to choose Ohio Wesleyan. And within a couple of months after starting Ohio Wesleyan, said to me how glad she was she had made that choice. Cindy and I favored, a smaller liberal arts environment for the reasons that parents have already said. The breadth of studies that Ohio Wesleyan offers, combined with the close work that students can do with professors in specific areas of interest, both academic interest and future professional interest, and that the professors they work with are very accomplished in their fields. And we'll just provide a couple of examples through the experience that our daughter and our son have had at Ohio Wesleyan. Our daughter was very interested in writing and majored in English with a writing concentration. She worked very closely with Professor Amy Butcher, who not only is a published author, but now working on a movie as well. And with all that Professor Butcher was doing, she still kept plenty of time to work with our daughter and her writing, and to support her, for example, to attend the University of Iowa writing program one summer, which Ohio Wesleyan University provided the funding for, and became a very important experience for her. In Delaware, our daughter was able to get an internship at the local Strand Movie Theater, which is a theater that shows feature films as well as classic films, and sponsors community programs. And that internship became a very important experience for our daughter, because she could use her writing within various contexts. She communicated with various community organizations to inform them of the community programs that the theater sponsored. She put together a newsletter for the theater as well. And those skills, as well as what she learned from her classes and professors, have put her in very good stead. She's now working with Scott's Miracle-Gro in their sort of consumer relations and marketing areas, and is about to begin now remotely a master's program in communication through Syracuse University. So we couldn't be happier with the choice that she finally made. Our son, who is now a sophomore, had already decided early on in his application process that he wanted to go to Ohio Wesleyan. And he did not even apply to other universities. Cindy and I were very satisfied with that. And one of the reasons he wanted to come to Ohio Wesleyan was the liberal arts environment, the small university environment, but also because since he was a small boy, he had played soccer. And Ohio Wesleyan has a very, very good, successful tradition in soccer. And he wanted to be at Ohio Wesleyan for that reason as well. At Ohio Wesleyan, he's majoring in health and human kinetics, initially with an interest perhaps in physical or occupational therapy. But since then, he's decided to minor in history and psychology. And through history, sort of study the social implications of study society, I should say, and the social implications of health. And through psychology, look even more closely at an interest that he has in sports psychology. So the fact that he's at Ohio Wesleyan and can take advantage of a variety of studies has helped him expand his original interest and even brought him into contact with other professional opportunities. And what became very important to him, and what I'll close with here, what became very important to him was that the coach of the soccer team, Jay Martin, who's taken Ohio Wesleyan to 2 national championships, was also his academic advisor in the health and human kinetics department. And when Professor Martin sat down with him to talk with his academic advisee, he also found out about Asher's interest in soccer, and it became a kind of interview for the team unexpectedly, and he invited him to join the soccer team. And this has given Asher, our son, another important reason for enjoying Ohio Wesleyan. And it's also brought him in contact with incoming students. Through soccer, he's been able to meet with incoming freshmen to Ohio Wesleyan and sort of develop even wider friendships as a result. So the reasons that Cindy and I had for wanting our daughter and son to choose Ohio Wesleyan turned out to be the right reasons, and we're very grateful.
Great, thanks so much, Cindy and Lou. So I'm going to try to work through some of the questions that are being asked in the Q&A. There's been a couple of questions that relate around academic support that is offered to students, including the Bishop Access Program. So I wondered if any parents were able to talk about how their students were able to get academic support, either officially through the Sagan Academic Resource Center and or the Bishop Access Program, or just generally in their studies. Raquel?
I'm happy to speak about the Bishop Access Program. I don't think we knew about it at the time at which Haley decided to go, but we found out about it quickly after. And honestly, it's one of the most impressive support programs I've ever been exposed to. So in addition to having an academic advisor, they had a full program where the kids worked with the kids on how to organize themselves. They had regular sessions, like an hour tutorial every single day with different experts on the various subjects. In addition, I think it was every 4 weeks, there was a write-up from all of the professors letting the kid know how they were doing. Are they tracking well, not well? What do they need to work on? It was incredibly comprehensive. And for us, because Haley was making the transition to a different state on her own, she had some different learning challenges throughout her academic career. It was really a nice insurance policy for us to, even though Ohio Wesleyan is a small school, even though the professors cared, to have this additional level of support. And it was really wonderful because the transition to college is a big one, depending on what your child does in high school. And even though Haley went to a very strong preparatory private school in Atlanta, just the social transition of going to college and having to manage everything on her own was a
Looks like we may have lost Raquel. Anybody else care to add on that while she may be trying to join back in? Jennifer?
I don't want to barge in. I wish to God my son would take advantage of the Access program, but he's stubborn. But I want to say, I just answered a question in the chat about this. I know that they have, OWU has tremendous services, and my son has developed a very strong relationship, I think, with his advisor. So the services and support are there. It's a matter of convincing your kid to take advantage of it. And I think Raquel is back, and I'll let her finish because she's much more
I
eloquent.
don't know where I cut off though. Where did it break off? My internet died, sorry.
I lost track of where you cut off as well. So you're welcome to just repeat if you need to.
I was just saying Bishop Access did a great job, including summary notes from the professors every 4 weeks, letting the student know how they were doing, all of the tutorials with all of the respective disciplines. So it was a great program for us. It was so great that Haley had a strong enough first year that she decided not to continue it her second year, and she's done just fine. So I thought it was a really strong program, and it really was a nice insurance policy for us, and I think a nice security blanket for her as she made the transition to a very different environment.
Awesome. Thanks, Raquel. Switching gears a little bit, one of our audience members wants to know what kind of activities are available on the weekends, and do students typically head home or do they stay on campus? Who wants to take that one? Debbie and John?
Yeah, let's. So we have three different kids with three very different interests. So I feel like we can answer this one. Our daughter was on the lacrosse team, and I can tell you that her weekends were with the lacrosse ladies every, even when they're off season. That was her OWU family. So that is, they were just always together. She came home occasionally, but not that often. They definitely, and I don't think she left school that often either. They were together with their friends. There's a couple bars uptown, but in town, but they're 21 and over. So they normally just, got together. There would be fraternity parties, or they would have get-togethers at their dorms, things like that. Our other daughter, who's a senior now, lives in one of the sloughs, and they have all kinds of fun. She's been a part of the board game club. She's been a part of a writers club. She actually was president of that when that was, but they don't get together anymore due to COVID. So she's been participated in a lot of different things that are completely different, because she's a quieter kid. And then our son, Jack, he's a freshman, and it's been challenging for these kids to meet new people this year, but they still find a way. They still are finding ways to, be friends with their roommates safely. This semester, I can tell that they're a little happier this semester. There's been a few things lifted, so they can actually get together in maybe groups of 10. So I know that they can actually see each other, but he's in music too. So three very different children in very different, what they like to do socially, and they have all found their place, and they all want to stay at school. They don't come home.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll add that the city of Delaware is a very vibrant city in itself. Every time that we've come down there to visit, there's always something going on there. Street fairs, they close down the streets for food fairs, street fairs. It's a very family-oriented city. It's, I think, one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Ohio. So it is a very vibrant city, a lot different than when I was there 35 years ago, but I think it keeps many students grounded at OWU, along with the sporting events, the Greek life, the clubs, just there's a lot going on at the university, just to keep the students interested when they're not in class or studying for their classes.
Great, thanks, Debbie and John. I'm going to pose this question to Cindy and Lou, I think. One of our audience members wants to know a little bit about once our student chooses OWU, how do I connect with other, this is twofold, how do I connect with other parents? And then what activities are there that are specifically for parents to, for example, visit their student throughout the year? You guys feel comfortable taking that one?
Sure. Well, Cindy and I decided to join the Parents Council during our daughter's first year, which was back in 2015. And we found that to be a very, not just an important way for us to understand, the university that our daughter was attending, but to meet other parents and to be part of the sort of life of the university in a way we wouldn't have been otherwise. So we've been very pleased with that decision, and we've continued to be part of the Parents Council when our son enrolled. We've met, and it also, I have to say that through the Parents Council, we've kept in touch with people from the beginning of our daughters, from our daughter's freshman and sophomore year, parents that we met during our freshman and sophomore year, we still are in touch with. And that was important for us. That was important for us. The university sponsors regular events for parents during the year. And depending upon where you live and your own schedules, those events are also very good to attend. And what we found is that in attending events like that, for example, either attending a soccer game or coming up for a particular community event, that we feel more and more that that Ohio Wesleyan is a community as well as a university. That might be the best way to put it. Yeah.
Great, thanks so much. Another question that I wanted to pose from the audience is, what is your favorite memory of OWU so far? And this may be answerable by multiple parents. Some of you have more experience, more years of experience than others, but who'd like to go first on that? Favorite OWU memory? Raquel?
I think it was move-in, and you're struggling to get the boxes in, and this guy kind of comes by and is like, "Hey, Haley, welcome to campus." And I'm like, "Who's a nice guy who's kind of helping us?" And I look at his name tag and I'm like, "Rock Jones, why does that name look familiar?" You're like hot and you're like, "What?" And then he leaves and I'm like, "Why does that name sound familiar?" I'm like, "Oh my God, did the head of school just like come by your dorm and help you with things?" But it was such a nice welcome to the university. And I think it really speaks to how hands-on Rock is with his leadership. But that's my funny favorite memory, because I didn't actually know who he was. I wasn't that, your mind is in a lot of different places. And I was like, oh, I should have talked more. So that's mine.
That's great. Any other parents care to share a favorite OWU memory? Debbie and John?
I think that so far our favorite memories are going to be the parent tailgate parties when the kids were playing lacrosse. Lots of lacrosse games, lots of fun memories with the parents of the lacrosse kids. We met so many people and we've had so much fun traveling to games with the other parents. And those will be lifelong friendships as well. And then move-in days are always special, just getting back to campus. And I'm really looking forward to when when our son's performances, music performances open up to the public. I'm really looking forward to the next 3 years being able to come down for his performances and some of the fraternity events that we'll be invited to as parents. So we still have 3 more. We've had 4 great years and can't wait for 3 more. So lots of fun. We've had a great time.
Awesome, thanks. Rock, I'm going to pose this question to you. It relates to the support that our students get after graduation. What is that? How would you characterize how OWU engages with graduating students via continuing education, supporting lifelong learning, active alumni network, and events? Can you talk a little bit about that from your perspective?
Sure. The first thing to say is that OWU has a very dynamic, vibrant alumni network, and we've got 1 or 2 alums in the meeting here. You don't ever go away. You're part of the Ohio Wesleyan family for the rest of your life. But in particular, I think maybe in relation to this question, as we have begun to put more emphasis on what we call the career connection, where we support students in thinking about how they will make the connection between a liberal arts education and a life of meaningful and productive and rewarding work. We're really thinking about it as a 9-year program. It begins when the student arrives as a first-year student, but we want to be with that student for at least the first 5 years after graduation. And so increasingly, we have recent graduates who are paired. I loved hearing the story, I think it was at Falco's, who's your daughter's working with Kristen Lear. The BAT person, Kristen graduated a decade ago, Fulbright fellow, an amazing, really, really amazing person. And she benefited from that kind of support. As she was becoming interested in bats, her primary professor was an ornithologist, and he lost her, he would joke, to the world of bats. But she found other alumni to support her in that journey, and that's a good example of the way in which those alumni networks or alumni connections are available to students in the years following their graduation as well. So we recognize that gone are the days when a student will graduate from college, go to work for IBM, and 40 years later retire from the company that hired them when they finished college. Today's college students are going to have multiple careers working in very different settings, and we want to ensure that they have the support of the Career Connection at Ohio Wesleyan, and through the Career Connection of our alumni body as they go through. I'll just say one other thing. Structurally, 3 years ago, we relocated organizationally our Career Center to the University Advancement Office, where it works directly with our alumni office, because we believe that the biggest resource that we have to support students in preparing for life beyond Ohio Wesleyan is our alumni network.
Thanks, Rock. Oh, Cindy and Lou.
Yeah, I just want to add to that very quickly to emphasize that when our daughter applied to Syracuse, the Syracuse Master's Program, several months ago, it had been almost 2 years since her graduation. But the professors who provided her with letters of reference did so instantly. It was a smooth process of application. The support she received from them in applying to graduate school was strong and unhesitating.
Great, thanks. Perhaps more than one parent can answer this question as well, but a question about how students balance a major and a minor. Is it too much? Is it manageable? Anybody want to take that question about how to balance multiple academic areas? Cindy and Lou?
Our son is doing that right now. He made sure that he took requirements in his major in health and human kinetics, but started to take history courses he enjoyed, and now is in the position to minor in history, and he wants to add a psychology major to it, which a minor that he'll start in the junior year and finish in the senior year. I think it's possible to do it. Students do need to concentrate on organizing their time well, but where students see a kind of natural connection between a minor field or even more than one minor field and their major, they can do it. They can do it. And the support for doing, and they'll find support for doing that among the faculty and at the university.
If I could just add on to that, that Asher is doing that while he's playing soccer. So he's got that time commitment as well. And he's also a part of a fraternity, and which also takes his time, but he's able to manage everything quite well. So I think it's doable, and students find support for it.
Laurie, if I could add to this, I'll speak first as president and then as parent. As president, it's just astonishing to me the number of very interesting combinations that students put together with majors and minors. But you don't have to do that. And here's where I speak as a parent. Our daughter sort of thought that she had to have 2 majors because it seemed like everyone she knew had 2 majors. And it was a liberating moment when one of her faculty members said to her in her junior year, "Anna, you don't have to have 2 majors." And that allowed her to take a breadth of courses that she would not have been able to take if she had completed that 2nd major. So while we often talk about the remarkable combinations that students put together, I think it's also important to give students permission to have a single major and then to explore the full breadth of the curriculum if that's their preference as well.
Perfect. Transportation is always a really hot topic, and we've got 2 sets of parents that are out of state and 2 in state. So this question can be answered by anyone, but it really relates to what is transportation like? Is it easy to get around Delaware and the Columbus area? And if your child is from out of state, how easy is it to get to and from the airport during breaks and whatnot? Who wants to start with that?
Well, I'm going to kind of make a joke that there's no transportation right now. My son is not going anywhere. I'm not getting him on a plane anytime soon. So he's been there for the long haul. But having said that, I do love that Delaware, I live in a walkable city, and Delaware is walkable. You do not need a car. You can leave campus and walk 5 minutes and be in I think it's a United States Historic District, if I'm not mistaken. I was only there in August. I'm dying to go back and participate in some of the events that OWU has for parents and students. But I don't think, so we haven't flown yet, but I think it's only about a half an hour from the airport, from Columbus.
Probably about 45 minutes.
Okay. As soon as I get that shot in my arm, I am getting my butt on a plane and I am going right to OWU. I have to figure out how he's getting home, but it's been a crazy year and I'm very grateful that he's away. A lot of kids are not away. They're stuck at home in their parents' house. So I guess we'll figure it out next year. But I love Delaware. I thought it was terrific. And I was very, very happy to see that you could walk everywhere or bum a ride from a friend and get where you needed to go. So that's my kind of semi-answer to that question.
Yeah, Jennifer, I would agree. I think Haley's first year, she didn't have a car. She went to church on most Sundays because there was a friend who had a car. The church is actually pretty close to campus. OWU has a program where they actually run buses to the airport around major holidays, or vans, maybe not a bus. That's really nominal. I think, Rock, what is it, like $23 or something to go to the airport? The Uber rate to the airport is probably more like $70 because it is a 45-minute ride. But we've done it every possible way, every possible permutation, because we've had quite a few airplane trips to and from. But I agree completely with Jennifer. I think there's no need for a student to have a car. Everything is walkable and easily accessible. And a lot of the local kids do come with cars, and they probably help out those kids who are not from around who didn't bring a car. So we haven't had any issues.
Anything else to add from our Ohio families?
We only live about an hour and 45 minutes from school. But, I will just add that, Delaware is very walkable. When I talked about the fest or the street festivals and things like that, it's like walking from the residential campus down to the academic campus. It's right there. There's a lot going on in just south of Delaware in some of the shopping areas. Easton is a very popular place. But again, as we said, the kids don't leave pre-COVID, the kids aren't leaving in droves every weekend to go somewhere. But I think there's probably an overabundance of students with cars. I know there's always been a parking situation there. So there are always friends with cars that will be glad to offer transportation. Our kids have always had a car there, and again, I think most times they will just park it and keep it there and then just use it occasionally. But there's plenty of transportation options, whether a friend or through the university.
Great, thanks. The other popular question we get often is about safety. So I'm wondering if anybody wants to talk about their perception of safety on campus, and also adding in there, if there were to be a campus emergency, how are you as parents notified, if at all? Who wants to take that one?
I'm not worried about that safety issue at all in Delaware, maybe because I have a big beefy wrestler son, but I'm pretty street smart. And when we visited there, I felt fine. I think that's maybe, I would say, a non-issue. Am I being naive, Rock? I think it's very safe.
Yeah, so I think we know the world in which we live, and it's 2021. Things happen. I think that it's a generally safe place to be, but we're not immune from things. And probably the thing that's most distressing to me is periodically this. The physical layout of our campus, for those of you who have not been here, is that streets run through our campus. So we're not quite as tightly compact as some small liberal arts colleges. And we've had a couple of incidents recently where a student walking along a walk would have someone from a car passing by hurl, an assault, a verbal assault, and that's not good. But there's, the campus responds quickly. So I wouldn't want to say that we're without incident. That would, but I think that we are. Delaware is a relatively safe place to be, but there are some people in the community who can be threatening.
Well, and I have a young lady, and I would just say, Jennifer, I think it's important for the kids to not be too complacent. I don't think there's anywhere in the world that is 100% safe. So, when Haley calls and it's late and she's like, oh, I'm just going to walk X place by myself. I'm like, no, you're not. She's like, Mom, it's fine. I'm like, there's nowhere in America that a young lady should be walking alone at 12 o'clock, in my opinion. So I would encourage us as parents to encourage our children to always take extra precautions, because anything can happen anywhere. We have never had an incident. She left her bike unlocked for God knows how long. It was always there. So we've never had an experience, but I don't want us to. So I want her to continue to be street smart and not naive. Just because Delaware looks picturesque doesn't mean that it's 100% perfect. Nowhere is.
You're right, Raquel.
Ohio Wesleyan is very, very transparent about anything that happens. That's the one thing as parents that we appreciate. The emails that we get are very detailed about what has happened at the university, the verbal altercation or whatever. I'm like, we get news as parents about everything that goes on, and our children receive the same email. So everything is reported. It almost surprises me how much detail we're getting. Like if somebody yells out a window, a verbal altercation, we hear about it. We know as parents, they're very forthcoming with the information so that we can talk to our kids about it and so that they're aware.
Great. We probably have time for maybe one or two more questions. So I'm trying to pick the ones that would be the best to ask. So I think what I'd like to do is, this is maybe a hard one, but is there anything you wish you would have known before you sent your student to OWU, positive or not so positive? Nobody can think of anything.
Okay, I have a totally silly one. You know, we're from Georgia, so we were really nervous about all the cold and all the snow. So I might have overinvested in very big, heavy snow boots and not realized that OWU would have a very good system for cleaning the sidewalks. So there are probably a few things that have been returned home because they have never needed to be used over the 2 years. Because I think the university does a good job when it snows of clearing the places where the kids would be walking. You know, I bought her like ski boots, like you have to have the best of this. And it's like, she didn't really need that. She did need the big warm coat, however, because it does get quite cold. So that we were prepared for.
I can think of something, it's kind of a minor thing, but I was kind of shocked when my son showed up at Thanksgiving with pretty much all of his stuff from his dorm room. I was like, dude, just bring a suitcase. So maybe they could communicate that. I think maybe that has something to do with COVID and how all the kids had to leave very abruptly last year. Or maybe he's just a little bit of a nut. I don't know what it is about. I just was not expecting like all of his stuff to come home besides the mini fridge. I thought that was hilarious. So that's pretty minor. I don't know what he's going to do. Maybe we're going to put some stuff in storage at the end of the semester. So stay tuned. But that's it's a minor kerfluffle.
So if a parent's son or daughter is having a hard time making a final choice, what advice would you give parents on how best to help them get to that final decision? Who wants to take that one? Cindy and Lou?
Go ahead.
We had two completely different experiences with our own kids. So I don't know what kind of generalizations to make. Our son knew, as I said, from the beginning where he wanted to go. Our daughter was the opposite. She could not come to a decision. And she waited until the last minute. And we just waited. We simply waited for her to come to the decision. Which is not to say we didn't, try to make our own case. We did. But it became very clear that the more we tried to make our own case, the longer it was going to take for her to decide. And so I wouldn't be able to predict. I wouldn't be able to provide any template for how to do it. Only be prepared for perhaps a long wait.
Raquel, did you have something to add?
I'm a big believer in the fact that parents can overstress their children. And I think chances are if your kid is in at OWU, they have lots of good choices. And I think the kid will sense your stress. At the end of the day, is the child's life going to be that markedly different between the choices? Everyone on this call really believes in OWU, but OWU might not be the right choice for every single person on this webinar. So I would just encourage you to be quiet. I mean, I said to all three of our kids, because now all three are out, I made my choice, right? And I'm happy with it. You've got to make your choice and not worry about what it looks like to other people. Reach deep in your heart and go with your gut of where you think you will fit the best, because you're not just choosing 4 years, you're choosing a lifelong affiliation with a group of people. So with that in mind, don't just try to check a box because of some other external pressure. Choose the box that's right for you, because I know for me and for my kids, it is a lifelong affiliation, and it's a really important one. But I would ask that you just not put any additional pressure on. I think we underestimate how much pressure our kids are under. And I think we need to not be an added pressure.
I'll just add sort of to close things that from a admission perspective as well as a parent perspective, I would just encourage you and your students to ask lots of questions to get to that place where you can easily say whether or not Ohio Wesleyan is the right fit. I'm a firm believer that the more information you know about something, the easier it is to make a choice about it. So we stand ready and willing and available to answer any of those questions that you may have, no matter how silly you might think they are, to help you and your students get closer to that final decision. So I also had a colleague once who said that she told her child, if you make a decision by April 15th, let's say, I'll pay your deposit. But if you make it after that date, you have to pay the deposit. So she was adding a little bit of pressure just to make sure that they met the deadline. I'm not necessarily recommending that, but I thought that was an interesting tactic on her side. So well, we are at time, and I want to make sure that we respect everybody's evenings this evening. So I want to thank our panelists for joining us, and thank you, Rock, for being here as well. A couple of just quick reminders about other things that are happening virtually and on campus. We continue this Bishop Plus virtual session series throughout the month of April. On April 7th, we'll have another Rock Solid Advice event featuring 4 OWU alums. So we encourage you to come back for that. On April 14th, we have one geared towards parents and family called Sending Your Student to OWU. We'll have several folks from student engagement and success and academic fairs answering some important questions for you about sending your student to OWU. And then on April 28th, we are offering a session called Becoming a Bishop, really focusing on sort of next steps for students who have either made their choice or are really close to their choice, talking about things like housing, advising, orientation, Camp OWU, and the like. We still do have 2 live virtual tours on the calendar. So if you or your student have not been able to visit in person, we are hosting those on April 8th and April 29th. You can find the registration for those online. And if you're so fortunate to be able to come to campus for an in-person visit, some of our admitted student visits are full because we have limited capacity, but we have a number of options called Slivers of College Life. They're happening April 12th through the 15th and April 20th to the 23rd, twice a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, plenty of room for those. So if you have a chance to drive out or fly out and come visit us, we'd love to see you on campus. So thank you again for being here this evening. So glad that you were able to join us, and hopefully you learned something new about OWU in the process. Have a great evening. Thanks, everyone.